He seemed like he was about to say no at first, but then groaned and ran his hand through his hair. What you think is wrong, I laughed. Really? For some reason, I assume you took your work wife on a romantic trip intended for us. We took a trip for our anniversary. He turned his head away. The mood was not pleasant. She was having a rough day at work, so I thought it would be nice for her to get away as well. What I heard did not make sense to me. You chose to be a hero by bringing her with you on our trip, correct? Have you considered how it would look? How do I feel about that? He defended himself, saying, I didn't plan it that way. I was instructed to leave. I had no cause to cancel. But it happened. What happened just now? Did you chance to be holding hands? What is the photo my friend sent me? Did this also happen? As he stared at me, no words came to mind. He was aware that he had been captured. John left the house after our dispute because he needed time to think. I didn't mind. I needed time to plan. It felt like being smacked in the face, and the more I thought about it, the angrier I became. What were you planning to do? I was not going to stand there and accept it. He could have her if he wanted. I wasn't going to make it easy for him, though. The following morning I called my lawyer, but I felt I needed to start preparing for the worst, even if I hadn't told John yet. Many women stayed with an abusive husband in the hopes that he would change, but I was not going to be one of them. I needed to keep myself secure. After a few days, I asked John to join me at a beautiful restaurant for supper. I assumed that being out in public might help keep things quiet. He appeared nervous when he arrived, as if he was prepared for another fight. On the other hand, I felt relaxed. What I planned to do was already fixed in stone. I slipped a manila packet across the table toward him after we'd taken our seats and paid for our meals. What's this? He asked. I said outright, divorce papers. I had previously spoken with a lawyer. John's face turned an unusual shade of red, which I had never seen before. Ava, are you certain? You're going to end our marriage over one mistake? One mistake. I nearly laughed. John, you haven't felt anything about your marriage in months. Then you took her along on our anniversary trip. I am not sure what you mean by mistake, but I cannot accept it. He likely looked around the restaurant too. I made sure no one was paying attention, but I didn't mind. Ava, let us simply talk about this. You can't genuinely want to break up. I told you I didn't want this, yet you forced me to do it. In my own marriage, I will not be the second choice. John contacted me numerous times that night, but I did not respond. I had plenty to say. He'd made his decision, and now it was up to me to follow suit. When I contacted my best friend, she came over immediately with wine and ice cream, and we talked about the situation all night. When John arrived home, I had already locked the bedroom door and fallen asleep. I could hear him walking down the hall. He was presumably pondering about whether to knock. He didn't, however. He must have realized that it was too late for that. I've been feeling tight since then. John still lives here, but we don't talk often. He keeps apologizing, admitting that he made a mistake, and expressing his desire not to lose me. Perhaps I no longer care. Update 2: I apologize for the 2 weeks since I handed John the divorce papers from the restaurant. I feel like I've regained control, but I'm also upset by how quickly everything came apart. Following that night, John attempted to maintain his calm. It's 100 times weirder because he's still living there. We don't speak often, and when we do, it's tense. It's really difficult to understand. He's either attempting to say sorry and make me feel awful for not taking him back, or he'll be sad like a child. I'm not giving up, however. He doesn't seem to believe me yet, despite the fact that I've made it plain what I want. I had another meeting with my lawyer to get things started. We discussed about how to divide our assets, which has not been simple. Fortunately for us, we don't have children, but we do have a house, 2 cars, and cash. However, John wants to drag this out since he claims he wants to mend things and that we do not need attorneys. I also discovered that John has not been speaking the truth regarding our finances. When I was reviewing our accounts, I saw some odd withdrawals and spending. I didn't know them. It appears that he has been paying for Molly's belongings, lunches, travels, and even her apartment rent, several times. Even though he claimed they were simply friends, he was essentially paying for her lifestyle. I was outraged when I learned it, but now it merely confirmed what I already knew. The fact that John is attempting to reclaim me after I issued him with divorce papers makes matters worse. He sends her flowers and love messages, promising to be a better husband. If it didn't hurt so much, it would almost be amusing. A few days ago, he told me that he is no longer in touch with Molly and that she does not matter to him. And that giving me those papers was the one moment he recognized how much he adored me. He had tears in his eyes, which I had never seen before. Even though I tried not to, I couldn't feel anything but pain. I don't think he realizes how much he hurt me. That is not all. It's also about the months of neglect, the falsehoods, and how I've been feeling like a ghost in my own marriage for quite some time. I told him I couldn't forgive him, and that I still wanted to get married. I had to stand my position because he was so sorrowful. He asked if we should go to therapy, but I don't see why. I believe it is well past time to fix anything. Of course, John and I are not the only ones impacted by this. It's a disaster now that our families are involved. John's actions have enraged my father. They didn't like how distant he had become over the last year, but this whole situation has made them lose it. That's why my mom keeps calling me to be sure I'm okay. She also informed John that he was no longer welcome at family functions. I didn't expect her to go this far, but I appreciate the support. But what about John's family? That is a different story. Last week, his mother called and asked me to alter my mind. She said that difficult times occur in every marriage, and that we simply needed to get through them. She even had the arrogance to claim I was being overly sensitive. It didn't make sense to me. I informed her that she could support her cheating son if she wanted, but I was not going to be compelled to stay in an unsuitable marriage. There's also the Molly factor to consider. At John's legal firm, word has spread about their little romance. Some of John's coworkers, people I've met at social occasions over the years, have contacted me to express their shock and regret. Molly isn't very popular at work, it turns out. Some others believe she has been too close to other male coworkers, and they are now speaking negatively about her and John. I've heard Molly hasn't been going to work since the news broke. Speaking of Molly, I've heard that things have cooled off significantly between her and John. He hasn't seen her since the divorce papers were issued to her. He may have realized how horrible he has been, but I still believe he is not ready to let go of her. They haven't officially ended their relationship yet, but I can see John is considering his options. I'm currently seeking for a new location to live. I need to leave the house. It's difficult to breathe here since all I can think about is how things used to be. I recall a moment when I was pleased with every aspect of this house. It appears to be a tribute to all of the falsehoods and failed promises. At the same time, John appears to be breaking apart. He still has to go to work, but he is no longer the same person he once was. I've heard from some of his pals that he's been distant and busy, and there's even speculation that his job at the company has gotten worse. This does not make me pleased, nor does it surprise me. If you lead two lives, one will eventually catch up with you. It is obvious that his connection with Molly was not worth what he is going through. He seemed to be getting it now, but it is too late for me. He has tried to chat to me several more times, but I have changed my mind. This isn't good enough for me. Update 3: It's been 3 months since I handed John the divorce papers, and to be honest, things have only worsened. I thought I had moved on from the deception, but now everything is a mess. When I first served the papers, I assumed that obtaining a divorce would be simple. We had no children, so it was simple to divide the land. However, John had to complicate matters. He is now disputing practically everything, including our house, cars, and even our joint savings, because he was unable to get me back. He hired a lawyer because he dislikes divorce. The lawyer's been a nightmare. They are doing everything they can to gain as little as possible from the split. The worst part is that John is attempting to make it appear as if I am being unjust. He even made it sound like we could start anew and work through things. Find out if I drop the case. It appears that he does not comprehend that we have passed the stage of making peace. What truly irritated me was when he claimed the house should be his because he is the primary worker. It didn't matter that I worked and contributed equally monetarily, or that I quit my career for the sake of our marriage. His sense of luxury is insane. But my counsel has been excellent. She assisted me in locating evidence that John was cheating on me, which we are utilizing in the divorce proceedings to argue for an equitable wealth allocation. I also learned that John has been depositing money into a secret account that he claims is for work-related expenses. Of course, we are also looking into it. Attempts at mediation have completely failed. John still expects I'll give in, but I won't. I'm not going to let him force me away from what I believe in. Every time we meet, it feels like a war zone, and I can see the rage on his face when he realizes I'm not giving in. Things are growing worse at John's law firm as the divorce takes longer than anticipated. The rumor of his romance with Molly has spread like wildfire, making things extremely stressful. Friends of ours informed me that several of his coworkers are unsure about his decisions, even more so because Molly is notorious for getting too close to the men she works with. John's bosses are likewise unhappy with the situation. Some clients have questioned whether John's personal life is interfering with his work, which is not a good indication for the company. There are even suggestions that John's employment is under jeopardy. If circumstances worsen, he may face unexpected consequences at work. He gave up his wife for Molly, which is kind of funny, but he may now lose his job. Molly, on the other hand, jumped ship. I learned that she transferred to a different company because the whispers about their previous one became too much to bear. It appears that she was likewise unwilling to face the repercussions. What's happening between her and John right now? I am not sure, but I have heard that their connection is not what he expected. While John's world breaks apart, I've been working to rebuild mine. I acquired a little room in the city and moved out of our home a month ago. It's been strange but also exciting to adjust to living alone. The room gave me For the first time in a long time, I have the opportunity to focus solely on myself. I no longer feel like I'm walking on eggshells. However, things have not always been easy. My emotions are still a mess some days. Sometimes the dishonesty hits me unexpectedly, and I just break down. I assumed I'd be further along in the healing process. I've been attempting to cope by attending therapy, keeping a journal, and seeking assistance from others, but it's been more difficult than I anticipated. I sincerely feel horrible for John's family. After several months of silence, his mother contacted me again. She was kind, but I could see she was struggling. She informed me that John was breaking down and asked if I would speak with him again, even if it's only to let him down gently. I wasn't sure what to say. A part of me felt terrible for her, but another part was angry that she would ask me that after what her son had done to me. While I cared for my sick mother, my husband went on an anniversary trip with a friend. I presented him the divorce papers at supper. It's over for him now. I never expected this to happen to me, but here I am. I am 27 years old, my name is Ava, and I have been married to John, who is 28, for 3 years. We met at college, while I was studying to be a teacher, and he was trying to become a lawyer. The connection was difficult, and after a while of dating, he proposed marriage. It seemed like everything was fine. It was a stunning wedding. Our first few years of marriage were ideal. We were that pair we were always laughing, helping one another, and talking about the future. Things have changed slightly during the previous year or so. John's employment at a large legal firm grew increasingly essential to him. He is driven, which is something I have always admired about him. These days, however, it appeared that he was married to his job rather than me. To begin, I tried to understand. I knew it was difficult to be a lawyer, so I didn't mind that he worked late, skipped meals, and spent his weekends at work. I assumed it was simply a phase and we'd be fine once it was gone. I even started planning a special trip for our anniversary to help us reconnect. I felt that would help us get back together after we broke up. After 6 months, John started talking about Molly, 25F, a new employee at his workplace. He described her as a young, ambitious, and refreshing presence in the office. He said they got along well and could easily bounce ideas off of one another. At first, I didn't think much about it. Jesty folks have never been my style, and I had complete faith in John. However, as the months passed, John began to devote more time to work. When discussing Molly, he would say things like, "Molly thinks we should take a different approach with this case," or "Molly made a great point in the meeting today, it did not." It bothered me at first since I assumed he was just enthused about work. I did notice changes in him following that, though. He started dressing nicer for work and went to the gym more regularly. But while we were supposed to be together, he was constantly on his phone. When I asked him what he was doing, he always responded, "Work stuff." I joked with him about it once and asked, "Should I be worried about Molly?" He laughed and told me I was insane. However, I had the impression that this was more than just a nice business friendship. Our relationship began to deteriorate about this time. We stopped going on dates, and our conversations became tedious monologues about bills, schedules, and the day-to-day tasks that needed to be completed. There was no spark, no passion, and worse, no intimacy. I kept bringing it up, but he disregarded me each time. He was only unhappy about work, he explained. I waited a while because I believed things would improve on their own. However, as time passed, he grew increasingly distant. He got to work even. Later, when he returned home, he was either checking his email or conversing on his phone. There was a difficulty that I was unable to solve. When I tried to talk to him, he said I was exaggerating and that everything was okay. He made me want to trust him, but I could see something had changed. Molly was next. John stated Molly's effervescent demeanor made his job easier. I saw John had this when he talked about her. Look at this. I have no words to express how horrible it made me feel. The final straw came when he missed our date night to attend a work event with her. I tried to tell him about it, but he insisted I was making things up and she was only a coworker. I knew better, however. I finally spoke to him directly, and I asked if they were having an affair. He looked at me as if I had just threatened to kill him. "Do you mean this? Molly is merely a friend. You're being very suspicious." I sincerely wanted to believe him. But there were just too many signs, so I figured a romantic getaway would help us get back together. Because our anniversary was approaching, I arranged a romantic mountain getaway for just the two of us. No drugs, no work, and nothing else to do. That was my goal, to keep our marriage intact. But just as we were about to leave, I received the worst imaginable news. My mother became quite ill and had to go to the hospital. It broke my heart. I convinced John that he should still go on vacation so that he could relax while I cared for my mother. He was unsure. But after I persisted, certainly. So he might clean his thoughts, I reasoned. Then we can speak. When he returned, he explained everything. I knew he'd make the right decisions while he was abroad. We texted and FaceTimed the first 2 days of the vacation, just like we did on other days. Things started to go wrong after that. But he withdrew again, sending brief, ambiguous responses that frequently took hours to complete. I assumed it was because he wanted to relax, but I didn't feel great about it. Following that, a friend who was on vacation in the same location emailed me a photo. It was John, next to Molly. When we arrived at the restaurant, we had reservations. I was shocked. He took her along on the vacation, which was. It was going to be our anniversary party. I was worried sick about my mother at home and hoping that this trip would help us heal our marriage. He was on the trip with her, enjoying the romantic getaway. I was crushed. I haven't talked to him since he returned. Really, I don't know what to say. I've been going over it in my thoughts repeatedly to figure out what to do. There are times when I want to yell at him, throw away his belongings, and get divorced. But another part of me wonders if I'm overreacting and if there's a legitimate reason for everything, even though I don't believe there is. My best friend has asked me to leave him, but I haven't informed anyone else. Update 1i. I finally decided to tell John how I felt after holding it in for days. I kept thinking about what I was going to say and how he could react to it. Would he apologize? Say no to everything? Even worse, by gaslighting me, you make me believe I was overreacting. I realized I needed to deal with my worry because it was killing me. We picked a Saturday night when we were both free. It had to be done in person. I was not going to let him get out of it by text. When I stepped in and sat next to him on the couch, he was hooked to his phone, as he always is. John, let's discuss. He glanced at me with surprise when he realized how serious I was. How are you? I took a deep breath and did it. I know who Molly is. I understand you brought her on a trip for your date. His face became white.